It takes many, many years to get those round delts. But it's a combination of that, the upper chest, having a small waist. That's mainly in the upper body when you look at the physique. I guess with TRT, this is one of the things where I did get caught up in like the fitness industry. A lot of it is genetic. That doesn't mean you cannot build an aesthetic physique. So that's also something I've always been preaching.
So I want to kick things off talking about aesthetics. You've been focused on it since the days of student aesthetics and stop miring, dropping the book, My Shredded Lifestyle, in 2017. Can you explain what makes an aesthetic physique in as much detail as possible?
All right, man. So the aesthetic physique, when you start at the top, it's obviously the round shoulders, which are very difficult to get. So that takes a long time, especially if you're natural, to develop all the heads. Now, people that use steroids automatically get these round delts. You always see that happen. But it takes many, many years to get those round delts. But it's a combination of that, the upper chest, having a small waist. That's mainly in the upper body when you look at the physique. The abs obviously have to be very tight. And so I'll get into this in a second. But like right now, my physique is not as aesthetic as it used to be because I started training differently. And then having the lines on the legs, basically having small calves because, you can do whatever you want, but it's just not going to happen, at least for me. So basically, it's just when you look at the statues of like Greek gods and things like that, it's just that's the physique, the superhero physique for men. At least women obviously have a different take on it. So I usually have been obviously training my physique in the way that men would kind of look at it, if that makes any normal sense. So that's the aesthetic physique. Big on the top, then the V shape, the V taper. And so just real quick, as I was just saying, now that I'm not training for purely aesthetics anymore, I actually really noticed a difference because I've been doing a high rocks now, which is it's a combination of like endurance and high intensity stuff. Most people know CrossFit. It's sort of derived from CrossFit, I suppose. It's more anyone can do it basically, but you train a lot more core. And I've been doing more calisthenics too, and I've noticed like my core is not as tight as it used to be back in the aesthetic days. So my physique is still aesthetic. But it's not. Maybe I'm not training as much for aesthetics as I used to, and I've noticed a little bit of a difference in specifically the waist, which makes a lot of difference when you do train for aesthetics specifically.
Yeah. So I guess you would agree that shoulder to waist ratio is like an important part of aesthetics. Like that's something that for a while I was measuring. I don't measure it as much now, but I found that like when that ratio was as high as possible, people would comment that I look bigger, even if I wasn't bigger.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's the aesthetic illusion. And so for example, when I did a lot of these photo shoots or like when I wrote the book, My Shredded Lifestyle, I like throughout the years, I didn't always have the most impressive physique if I would be wearing a shirt. But then if I would be cutting down and getting really lean and having the right proportions, the shoulder to waist ratio, you would really see people would be like, oh my, like all of a sudden you look so different, even though I was much lighter. I wouldn't weigh that much. During the men's physique show, I was weighing 73 kilograms. In Canada, they have pounds or kilos?
Yeah, so Canada's a weird one where like we lean on America sometimes and then we lean on Europe sometimes. So we use pounds for weight, but like if I'm going to the airport, we use kgs. Like it's I don't know, man. It's Canada. It's weird.
Well, I suppose it's like 170 something pounds, maybe even 160.
You're pretty tall too, right?
Yeah. So 185 centimeters, which is 6'1". Yeah.
So I guess how important do you think for aesthetics things like symmetry and proportions are?
Yeah, it's very important. One thing is unfortunate about aesthetics, that it's a lot of it is genetic. And so the way you're going to grow, a lot of it is genetic. That doesn't mean you cannot build an aesthetic physique. So that's also something I've always been preaching. I don't have the best like genetics for bodybuilding. I certainly don't have the best genetics for powerlifting because, like, for example, my wrists, for example, are super small. So if I were to do powerlifting, I just couldn't go as heavy as the big guys. So a couple of years ago, I figured this out when I met someone who does like a lot of very high intensity like powerlifting stuff, but also weighted. He has the world record, I think, in like weighted chin ups. And we looked at this, like his wrists, they're like twice the size of mine. And so it makes sense that he can put on a lot more muscle in general, and he can move a lot more weight without it being like fragile as with me. And so obviously my calves are not the strong point, but that's not the biggest deal. But for example, the biceps, I have a very long biceps, right? So I don't really have like a big peak. If you have this shorter insertion, it would look more aesthetic, right? So that's one factor is like genetic. Another factor is obviously how much work are you putting in to make sure you have that symmetry in your muscles, because maybe your back is not perfectly in line. Well, you could do more unilateral work, unilateral training. So exercise with one arm at a time to make sure you really get that proper balance, right? And then you have the balance, obviously, of different muscle groups. Some people are very genetically gifted with their chest. Those are usually the ones you pick out because everyone wants a big chest. But if you don't have those genetics, which I didn't have, for example, you just got to train your chest more. But then the opposite side of that is you cannot keep training your chest like 3 times as much as your back, because then your shoulders will start rounding forward. So a lot of it is genetics partly, a lot of it is making sure you do accept your genetics and then try to figure a way around it. But then still making sure you have the right balance of training as well, so that you don't mess up your physique by trying to just target one body part, which at some stage I've done as well with the chest. I had like back in the day, we did. Back in the day was obviously the bro science days where everyone would be training one muscle group a week. I would have like one day where I would only train my upper chest, and I would have one day where I would just do the lower chest, and then one day would be like more cable flies and stuff. It was hilarious. That's before I had my YouTube channel.
It's like, yo, what day is it today? It's like, oh, today's just upper chest day.
Yes, middle chest.
How many sets? 30. Yeah. All right, let's do it. Yeah, that's fair. And I also feel like from an aesthetic standpoint, you need to really be able to take the ego out of your lifting. Because I know a lot of people, when they start training, they're so focused on like their 1 rep max for bench. And then I see them doing like lateral raises and they're throwing around 30s. And I'm like with my cuff and the cable doing 15 with good form. And I can actually feel my side delt. So I feel like a big part of training for aesthetics is, in order to get those proportions, you actually need to like know that you're training the muscle and not cheating and using traps, because the goal isn't to lift as much weight as possible. It's to build the muscle and grow the right proportions.
Yeah, that's 100% true. And like when you're training for aesthetics, you're mainly training for hypertrophy, muscle
Exactly.
growth. Now, mind muscle connection is this thing that, like, by now there's been more science on it, but back in the day, there were like a lot of people would say that it didn't exist. So I remember like watching Chris Jones videos. Chris Jones, one of my first inspirations. Do you know him?
Beast mode.
Yeah, Beast Mode Jones. Yeah. And so he would always be talking about this mind muscle connection, and people would be saying like, nah, that's not science. It doesn't matter as long as you just move the weight. But it really does matter, and you start noticing it once you get more advanced. But when you're a beginner, you actually don't have that mind muscle connection yet. So I think it's interesting now that I've been lifting for 15 years, is that at some stage after so many years, you get to really know your body so much better, and you can feel like the little muscles working, and it's really cool. But it takes many, many years, I think, of training before you can really get that proper mind muscle connection down. Now, before that, you can obviously already work on having the perfect form, as you're just saying. And then even if you don't exactly know what you're feeling yet, at least when you have the proper form, you know that you're doing it right. And then going lighter is always a great way to do so. I think I personally am a fan of combining like I call it power building. So combining sort of powerlifting, not really, but like lower reps for the compound lifts and then doing higher reps on isolation lifts. But here again, the form is obviously important. But with the isolation, you can play around a bit more with things like cuffs and cables and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's important that the form's good, but you also don't want it to limit your intensity, right? So some people also then will be like, oh, well, my form wasn't perfect, but they're leaving like 4 reps in the tank. And that's why the only way to get good at things is to like just do it for a long period of time, do trial and error and figure out what works for you. And that's why if you tell someone who's a beginner to not use the 30s, they're probably still going to use the 30s because they have to like go through that arc of realizing like their shoulders aren't growing.
True. Yeah, true.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So I'm curious on your end. I know your channel, you talked about the aesthetic physique, but you also talked about aesthetics in general. Like you had videos on like hair, for example. So what do you think? What are the other parts outside of proportions that make someone aesthetic?
Okay. That's a good question. Yeah, so I've made some videos on that, but it's not like that's not my main thing. You know, the things that I talk about. So, but I'm also into like I like fashion, and I go through phases where I'm more into fashion, and I get a little into a little rabbit hole of looking like what's the latest fashion. And now lately, I haven't cared about it as much, and so I guess I just always go through kind of phase in my life, or like getting this perfect haircut, and then, but like it's like once I've acquired it, it's like okay, it's fine, I'll keep it. Um, so hair is obviously a big part. Now, hair is something that I'm not gonna like, I've just been genetically blessed with. With like my hairline is really good. Like I've noticed now, I just turned 30 about a week ago, 2 weeks ago. And so a lot of guys my age, have hair falling out everywhere, or like the hairline, or maybe even 10 years ago already. So I guess in that department, I'm pretty lucky. But then there's obviously also a lot of things you can do about styling your hair. So I've learned a lot about that stuff, like how do you perfectly style your hair, and then everyone has different hair types, so you have to like that's why I've made a hair tutorial video, but it's just me showing my hair, and obviously there are many different people that have different types of hair, but yeah, when you look at everything, I guess it's your physique. I mean, I haven't thought about it this much, so I don't know if I'm going to say this all right, but obviously your physique, I guess your presence in general, I think, if you want to be if we're talking about like aesthetic, like looking good, having good posture, right? And then well, the hair is a good group, but like the hair, the face, and like there are so many things. Skincare, I've only recently gotten into, which might be 3 years ago. This is something I would suggest if people are watching that are younger, definitely get started with that early on, because I've noticed a difference in like how my face looks, and I think I'm keeping it young the way I'm doing it now. I hope at least the last 3 years have not been bad in terms of change. So yeah, I guess those are some of the main things. Like the jawline is a big part of aesthetics. Now the jawline is something that will come and go basically if you want to build muscle and you're gonna be bulking a little bit, it's less sharp. So it's not bad right now, but it's not super sharp, but it's pretty sharp. But I'm kind of like at the beginning of my cut now, and I've also made a YouTube face transformation video where people can see the real, like this is many years ago, but I had this big bloated face and then I cut it down, maybe 16 weeks, and I look like totally different person. Yeah.
Do you feel like the facial aesthetics, it is an important thing and it's something that you obviously look better when you're lean. Did you find that to be a challenge for you to be able to bulk because your whole kind of personality and image was around being shredded? And then that if you bulk, you're going to kind of lose that facial aesthetics. Was that a challenge for you because you were kind of preaching this lifestyle that you were living, but it might have not been optimal for maximizing hypertrophy over time? Was that a challenge for you?
Yeah, so that's quite interesting. So I guess the face has always been a challenge as far as like the jawline, the fat hair. Also because I naturally just store kind of like the fat hair in my face. As far as the physique, I guess less of a challenge. I always found the jawline more of a challenge when I was bulking. And then, because it's the first place that I kind of store fat, And back in the day when I started my channel, I did not, well, maybe when I started, I had a girlfriend, but then we broke up. So I was single. And when you're single, it's even way more important, And so then I was really focused on that. But I guess throughout the years, I'm not gonna lie. At some point, you obviously talk about aesthetics a lot. You show aesthetics, so people do want to see that. But at the same time, it was kind of good for making content to also gain some fat, because otherwise, if you're always shredded, then there is no real journey for people to follow along. So I guess it's also cool for people to actually follow along, because then they relate more to me. Because when I'm always shredded, it wouldn't be very relatable, very realistic, because you cannot always have that perfect shredded aesthetic physique, I think now someone can already be aesthetic at 10-12% body fat, but back in the day, I took it pretty extreme in terms of how lean I would get. So I think you can actually maintain an aesthetic physique, but yeah, compared to the times when I had a super sharp jaw, etc., that's hard to maintain. It's actually impossible to maintain. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the challenge with some people, and I'm actually similar. When I bulk, I put on weight first in my face and my stomach, and the stomach bothers me, but a little bit less because I'm mostly wearing a shirt. Like, I don't care if I have extra, if my arms are less defined, but they're bigger. But the facial thing, like, you see a photo and you're like, fuck.
I know.
And it's only been like 10 pounds and you're like, shit, like it looked a lot better 10 pounds less, right? So I actually find the challenge with bulking is on the facial side. Like when the jawline looks good compared to when it looks fluffy, and that's visible all the time.
I think so too. Yeah, I think it's actually those photos indeed where you look at the photo and you're like, shit, I've taken it too far.
And you haven't actually taken it too far. It's just that's where the fat's stored. Well, some people can put on 30 pounds and their face looks pretty much the same.
That's true. Yeah. I wish I was one of those people. And that's interesting. Also the genetic part, we can get into that, but so as I said earlier, genetics matter a lot, and also in aesthetics, not just in where you put on muscle and, obviously the shape of your bicep, those things matter, but also where do you store fat the first, it matters a lot, the distribution of fat. So when we look at a guy like Matt Does Fitness, for example, you probably know who he is, yeah? Yeah, so he has crazy physique, super big, natural too, incredible. Now, when you look at his face, he can be a bit more bloated. He can be on, because he's also done these DEXA scans and stuff where he shows, I think he'll be like between 12, maybe even 15% body fat, but his abs are still pretty rock hard. But then his legs are not very lean and defined. When you look at my physique, my legs are pretty much I always have lines on my quads, even if I'm bulking and my face is super bloated, but I will not have abs. And so one could argue like it's obviously more aesthetic to have the genetics of Matt, because then you can be at a higher body fat percentage while still having abs. And for me, it's like I'll lose fat on my legs first before anything else. So this is kind of different for everybody. And again, it's not an excuse to not get shredded, to not whatever. But this is why for some people it's just easier to look a certain way than for other people. But for him, it will be really difficult to get lines on his quads, So it's different for everybody. But body fat percentage matters, and then the distribution also matters. As for some people, they can find acceptance with having a bit of a bigger face. If you can, that's great too.
Yeah, I was talking to someone where during their bulk, they put on 30 pounds and they only put on like, I don't know, less than 2 inches on their waist, like 1.5 inches. And then there's people that will put on like, in that same ratio, training well, they would put on like 5 inches. So it makes it easier to keep bulking if, it's going in the right places genetically. And that's just something you have to accept. Cool. All right. So you've said that you need to train your abs Abs are created in the gym and revealed in the kitchen. So from that standpoint, what is your Mount Rushmore, your 4 favorite exercises to train your abs?
All right. Pretty much all my favorite ab exercises are usually ones that you can do weighted, that you can increase in a simple way, because you want to apply progressive overload just like you would with any muscle. Like when we're doing biceps, you want to keep curling more weight. When you do bench press, you want to improve every week. But then when people train abs, they're going to do these endless crunches where they don't even really count. Obviously, you know, was it Michael Jordan who was doing the crunches? Muhammad Ali who was doing the crunches. I'm confused here. Who was doing the, who was doing it's late already. I've been up for a while. So Muhammad Ali said, I quit whenever I just can't do anymore, or then I keep going and I quit. I don't count them actually, but like for most people, that's not, it's not going to work that way. We're going to give up at some point. We don't know. We don't have his type of mentality, even though we would want that. So it's easier to just track your lifts and train them the same way as you would any other muscle. So even not go too high in reps, but do like 10 to 15 reps. And so the exercise I like, top 5, would have some sort of cable crunch. I love the cable crunch, and you can do that with with like a row attachment or with a rope. It depends on what feels good for you. So a cable crunch, then some sort of leg raise. You can do this on a Roman chair, but also hanging. And then if you want to add weight, you can do that by putting a dumbbell between your feet. And you can start with knee raises and then do leg raises once that becomes too easy. Then another one I like is the wood chopper, which is where you have the cable, you put it up high, and then you twist it like this.
Mm-hmm.
You really focus on like squeezing when you move the weight, or moving it with your abs rather than using your whole body, your shoulders to do it. That exercise is crazy. That's probably my number one. So those 3 other ones I do mostly, and then I like doing some sort of plank, a weighted plank, where you have someone put a weight on your back and then hold it for 1 minute, which is usually like a finisher. This is more to train the core, the transversus abdominis, your inner abs, because that's important as well. Now you do train those with squats and deadlifts and stuff, but not as much as people say you do. So I do like to train that separately. And then my number 5, what would that be? Let's see. I actually really like the ab roller, the ab wheel. Again, also for the core.
Yeah.
This one is just crazy finisher. Do it on your knees. If you can do it standing, that's amazing. But yeah, that one is just killer as a finisher. Yeah,
For sure. And people need to train abs all the time, even when they're bulking, not just when they're cutting, which is what I see a lot of people do.
Yeah, so it's actually better to train them when you're bulking. Like when you're cutting, you're going to maintain the size pretty much just by doing the compound lifts, right? And if you then do like just 2 sets twice a week, you'll be fine with maintaining. But if you actually train them during a bulk and you go a little higher in volume, more sets per week, you actually start building up your abs, and you can see a noticeable difference if you do. So this is what I always recommend people to do, but most just always skip them until summer is closed, and then they throw them in the program, And I've noticed this with coaching people as well. It's like the first thing they will skip. Just the way it is.
Yeah, it is what it is. All right. So I want to talk about my shredded lifestyle. You mentioned that in order to still have fun nights while reaching your fitness goals, you need to accommodate fitness within your lifestyle. So what tips do you have for people who want to look good, but they don't want to live the bodybuilding only lifestyle?
Yeah. So I've always been a big fan of, if it fits your macros, of flexible dieting. Now, my stance on that has changed a little bit over the years. So basically, flexible diet back in the day used to be you can eat anything you want as long as you're within the caloric range, as long as you hit your target calories, your protein, your fats, and like whether that's McDonald's or a Twinkies diet. There obviously has been a lot of this research and people doing these experiments where, yes, they can eat McDonald's and the Twinkies diet, only Twinkies for 30 days and lose a bunch of weight. And yes, that is possible. However, you're not going to feel the best. So it is important that you get quality nutrients in. But when we look at the overarching concept of calories and of energy balance and of that principle, then I do agree with that. But one rule that we always use is 80% whole, nutritious, clean foods, non-processed, and then you can play around with the other 20%. But for a lot of people like myself, it'll be 90%, 10%. And so the way we can structure this is that we look at our days and we eat mostly clean, but we also throw in some nice sauces, because chicken and rice and veggies are just not that enjoyable to eat dry. However, if you buy a chicken thigh, which has a little bit more fat, it's nice. You make a sauce, or you buy some prepackaged sauce or some pesto. It just makes it a lot nicer right away. It adds a bit of fat, but if you're not a pro bodybuilder, that's really not going to matter. So just by making your meals a bit a bit nicer that way, that's already one thing you can change. And then saving some calories, the 10-20%, to have a snack. So that can be a slice of pizza, it can be some ice cream. Now, some people might have a hard time doing that every day, because then the cravings might kick in. This is also a concept, like I can tell you what I'm doing. It doesn't necessarily work for everybody. But that's sort of the idea, is that I do like if it fits your macros, but I would say do the 90-10 or 80-20 rule. And then one more thing that I really like, that I'm a big fan of, is intermittent fasting. So I basically haven't had breakfast in about 8 years now. I am kind of like anti-breakfast, I guess. And so for me, it has not only helped with losing fat, but it's just made it's made it a lot easier to eat less. But it's also helped me immensely with my energy levels, with my focus in the morning. And so when you start eating right when you wake up in the morning, your body gets this blood sugar spike, and I just instantly feel more tired. I can focus less, and I have a hard time getting into this flow state. And as an entrepreneur, I've written a book. I'm writing a new book, which hopefully will be out next year. But I do a lot of writing, a lot of like creating videos, creative work. You want to be sharp when you do so. And so I do that primarily in the morning when no one is bothering me, and I want to have the maximum amount of energy. And when I do intermittent fasting, I really have that pure focus, without the crashes, without the changes in blood sugar. So I really like it. So drink a lot of water in the morning. You don't eat, and then have some caffeine, black coffee, no additives. And then I will have my first meal usually at around 11 or 12. And then I'll have 3 meals over the day, maybe 4. And I stop eating in the evening at like 8 or so. And it doesn't necessarily have to be the 16-hour fast, 8-hour eating window. It can be a bit less as well. Some days are less, some days are more. And when you do intermittent fasting, you just are able to save a lot of those calories that you would have for breakfast for later on the day. And what you can then do is have a big dinner. You can go out with friends, you can have some drinks. And this is actually how I've been able to always kind of maintain this lifestyle where I'm lean 24/7, even though I still do fun stuff, by saving a lot of calories and by making sure I have this, if it fits your macros, type diet, where I still look at micronutrients, I still look at quality of food, but I also know that at the end of the day, it's all about the total calories that I take in. Yeah.
For sure. Yeah, I think the day-to-day, most people listening here are actually pretty good. They're mostly like intermediate lifters who understand things like calories. I think where it's the challenge is on those nights where you want to socialize, like you want to go out for dinner, you want to go out drinking with friends. I feel like people feel like they have to make a decision, like they'll say no because they're taking fitness seriously. But I think fitness shouldn't take over your life, so you're saying no to the fun things in life. You need to figure out what that balance is like. And it sounds like you're kind of saving up calories for nights where you're going out and then you're drinking alcohol and kind of fitting in food then. Is that the strategy for those days?
That is the strategy for those days. So basically what I would do, so I always kind of use this strategy for just like having some chocolate at night or just enjoying myself. But when I would go out to like actually party, what I would do is still intermittent fasting, but I would do it even longer than normal. Then I would have my first meal would just be veggies and protein source. So whether that be eggs, because it's usually that's kind of like my first meal. So a bunch of eggs, like 5 eggs and veggies, that would kind of fill me up. I would not have any carbs, like any fruit or whatever. Then for like meal number 2, I would kind of do the same thing, maybe a bit of a bigger portion, maybe some carbs, but not that much. I would do the same for meal 3, and then I would just have saved a lot of calories, mainly fats. I would save, and the calories from fats, and then I would in the evening enjoy myself for the drinks, to have the dinner, and then I wouldn't think about it anymore. So I would just make sure I have kind of like this buffer. Like if I know I'm gonna go to a restaurant and I want to have some drinks after as well. And back in the day, I used to party hard. I don't do that anymore, really, because I just turned 30. I guess my party days are over.
They're not over, man. Trust me, I'm 40.
No, but like
they're not over, but they're slower. They're slower.
They're slower, but like yeah. So I used to party every weekend, and like I don't go hard on the alcohol anymore. It doesn't really. I still like partying, but that just doesn't really serve me anymore the way I used to. So I would back in the days save about 1,500 calories for a night like this.
Okay.
And then I would just kind of forget about it. I would be like, okay, I've done my best today to save those calories. And I'm not going to track my dinner. I'm not going to track my drinks. It's just like I have enough room to play with, and that's fine. So I feel that's sort of a regular person wouldn't say it's a healthy approach, but I guess a bodybuilder would say, or someone who tracks their calories like that. I think that's a healthy approach.
It sounds reasonable to me, right? Like,
yeah, it sounds
there's going to be times where you want to go out, and like I drink alcohol often enough. Anytime I'm out with friends and they're drinking, I'll have a drink or two. I've always socially done that since high school. So I could change. I could be the person that never drinks, but I would find that very challenging from an identity standpoint. And I don't really want to change it. So I kind of just fit it in. And if I'm cutting and I'm going out, I'll just treat it more like a maintenance day, where it's like, okay, I'll eat at maintenance. Yeah. I'll try to eat less food during the day. And then even with my alcohol consumption, I probably won't drink beer. I'll drink like, I don't know, Diet Coke and rum or something like that, which is a little bit less calories.
Yeah, so that's what I would always do as well. So I would also show people what I drink, it would often be the same. So Captain Morgan Coke Zero used to be kind of my signature drink, which is it's like a rum, yeah.
It tastes like it ends up tasting like cherry Coke, right? The Captain Morgan one.
Yeah, it's super nice. It's a really nice combo. And like vodka with you can do sparkling water. I didn't really like that much. I like with Sprite. Obviously the 0-calorie one. And like some drinks they don't have everywhere. I guess in America or in Canada maybe they do. But here in Europe, like very often they don't have all these zero drinks, so they only have Coke Zero very often. Or then you can go, so it's either Coke Zero with rum or with vodka, or it's like vodka with sparkling water. Those are usually kind of like the options that are everywhere. But I would never indulge in much beer. So I if I drink, I like having one beer, maybe 2, and then I go over to the stronger stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, and if they don't have any 0-calorie, then you just do shots of tequila.
Yeah, that does not go well. But yeah, that's I've been there.
All right, I'm gonna throw out some quotes, some things you've said in the past. Give me your first take on it. All right. So the first one here is, it hurts me so much when the views are low, even though my income doesn't depend on it, because YouTube was my first love and my hobby. Once you reach a certain level and it goes down, it doesn't feel great. It feels bad in a certain way.
Oh man, that's a great saying. Yeah. I guess all my YouTube friends have said the same thing. We always say this to each other in real life. Even a guy like Max Tuning, who you might know as well, he's just sold his company, like a sour strips to Hershey's, like massive deal. And I heard David talk about this the other day, where he still feels the same way. Like the YouTube views are just so important. So it's like no matter how much money you make, it'll always be important in some sort of way. Now, obviously, I've been doing this for a long time now, so you also realize that things just go up and down, and that happens, and you find some acceptance with it. But yeah, it has definitely hurted a lot in the past. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like it's just there's a standard and you have that standard in your head. Because I'm sure when you started and you were refreshing and getting 300 views,
Exactly.
the views you're getting now would be good. But once you hit that standard, and I think that's just a human trait, like it's hard to downgrade your lifestyle once you've done it, right? Like once you buy a luxury car, it's hard to not buy a luxury car. Like that's
It
just
is.
human nature.
It is human nature, and at the same time, it's very unfair against yourself because you start the YouTube channel. Me, for example, you get those views, you start doing it full time, and then you don't have that much going on yet. Well, in the beginning, I was living with my parents even, so you start comparing a certain life and a part of your life. So the YouTube views, you start comparing it with the way it is now, but you forget that right now you have, like, I've started multiple businesses. You have way more responsibility than back in the day, and so your life is completely different. And so it's hard. And the YouTube algorithm obviously has changed as well over the last 5 to 10 years. So very often we compare something we have now or the views someone else has, but we don't know what their life is like or the choices they've made. And so it's always hard to, it's always easy to compare certain things, but then forget about comparing the other things. And it's not really a fair comparison very often.
Yeah, and I
So
think
that's something I've realized as well over the years. Yeah.
I think people that are successful, the problem is it's not even other people, it's our own standards for ourselves, right? Like I sold my company to Google, then my next startup didn't do very well. I was really hard on myself for no reason, even though the situation was different. And I was like, why is the drive not there like it first was? And then over time, I've just given myself that grace to be like, it's okay that you don't have that same drive because you already achieved a lot of the goals. You can't expect it to be exactly the same. Like you can't be so hard on yourself that you have to be that. Okay, I'm not David Goggins, you know?
Yeah. No, I feel you. Yeah. So how has that been for you? How long did that take to accept? Like to realize?
Bro, at least 5-6 years. I
Mm.
think it's taken time to kind of a lot of self-reflection, asking myself questions on what I want from life, like what are actually the 10 most important things. And then I think there was just an expectation of what other people wanted from me. Like you were saying you used to go out partying. So there's certain people that expect that from you. And then it's hard to break that expectation because you don't want to disappoint them. But ultimately, it's your life, man, and you got to live it on your own terms. But I would say it's taken me years, and I probably still haven't solved it completely. Like those thoughts and feelings still come in every once in a while because it's natural, we're human.
It is. Yeah. So I think the same thing with YouTube and with views and stuff. Even though I found a lot of acceptance with it, then obviously sometimes those exact thoughts will come back, and that it'll happen forever. I already know, and I also think I will be on YouTube forever. So I've had phases where I was less. Now I'm making a bit of a comeback, but it's still a slow comeback. I'm uploading almost once a week now, but back in the day, I was uploading 3 times a week. But it's not really fair to compare because my quality was also pretty like I would just literally just go to the gym and have this little small camera. Now we have all this equipment. I have camera people I work with. Things just take a bit longer working that way because I have other stuff to do as well. But yeah, I do love YouTube, so it's something I think will be forever there.
My shredded grandpa when you're like 70 years old.
Yeah. I mean, I see old guys on YouTube all the time, so I'm like, could be me. Yeah.
All right, next one here. People are very superficial, especially on Instagram, only showing you the good and the flashy and how cool their lives are. Trying to portray this life is not a reality.
Yeah, that's a good quote. I think it's getting worse and worse nowadays. A lot of these people are like they're being uncovered as well, and people just kind of know. But yeah, you're just looking at a highlight reel of someone else's life, and again, this is just people showing the perfect things of their lives, and right now making up a lot of stuff as well. So people are, renting more cars. Like back in the day, maybe some people would do this, but like what we're seeing now is just totally different level than 10 years ago.
They take
I'm
photo
pretty sure
shoots in jets, and they're like, "Oh, another private jet." It's like, bro, you paid the $199 for the
the
30
same one that
minutes.
everyone
Yeah,
has, right? Yeah,
it's not even a jet. It's like a set, right? It's the
it
same one.
is. Yeah. Yeah, so companies are also starting to realize it and making use of it, but it's going a bit in the wrong way. I don't know. Yeah, that'll
Do you
sound
feel
like me getting old, anyways. But
do you
I
feel
think
like you got caught up in that ever? Kind of the highlight reels and the Instagram?
I probably have in a certain way, as far as like being shredded, being with women was something I liked to show. Obviously, so for everyone, these status symbols are different, right? I've for me, like traveling, and I spent a lot of money traveling, and like, but also like in clubs buying bottles or something. Right now, you would never see me do. I've done that stuff a couple times, so I guess not really that much. But yeah, I suppose I have been caught up in that life a little bit. Yeah, you want to show that you're doing well, and then also if it gets traction, if it gets views, you will do it again. And that's what I think is happening now with those people, is that if they do something outrageous, they will get views, and then they will see, hey, it works, I'm going to repeat it. Which, as an entrepreneur, I totally understand, that people act this way. But um, I also have morals, so I guess I never got too caught up in it, where I totally lost myself in it. But certainly a bit. Yeah.
Yeah. I also want to have a disclaimer that like buying bottles and doing stuff like that, it is fun. Like I've done it. Like I've done bachelor parties in Vegas, and we've got bottles and
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
and I look back and those memories are awesome. So although
Exactly.
things may seem superficial, like it's still fun. It's still good memories, especially if you're with good people and
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
connect on it. It's not all bad.
Yeah, yeah. So I hope people don't take it that way. So that's not what I mean. But there is also people that just don't, like. I heard this the other day, um, where they had to pay back someone. Some friend paid the bottles for them, and then it took them a year to pay it back, just for one night. And then I'm like, if you don't have enough money, don't do that kind of stuff, because really, like, who are you trying to impress? Um, but yeah, buying bottles, like, sometimes, hey, I've done it, these things a couple of times, and it can be a really fun experience. And it's with anything. It's like, well, if people look at a physique, they might also think it's superficial to be building an aesthetic physique. It's like, what's the point? Why do you care? And I think it has great meaning to it. So not everything that it seems superficial has to also be that way.
Awesome. Cool. All right. I'm going to throw out a few things. Tell me if it's a highlight or a low light. Being on Men's Health magazine,
Highlight.
for sure. And how did that happen?
I guess it was a lot of things just coming together at the same time. So I was networking with them for a good while. I did some videos with them as well already. I wanted to be on that cover. I really did. And so I wrote my book before we launched the book. This was probably 2 years later. So from launching the book and getting like pretty well known in the Netherlands, it still took a while to get on a Men's Health cover. So it was really something I was working towards. And yeah, when they asked me, I was so happy. But at the same time, I was kind of sad because I just did a men's physique show, and then they called me maybe 2 weeks later, and I just gained 20 pounds in 2 weeks.
Oh,
And they
shit.
called me like, "Hey, do you want to? You can be on the cover." And I'm like, "Oh my god!" And then it's in 6 weeks, and I'm like, "Shit." So I had to get ready in 6 weeks. So my shape on the Men's Health cover is not the best. However, it was my ultimate goal to be on there. So when I was 15 years old, I had the goal, and when I was 25, I was on there.
Awesome, man.
Yeah.
All right, next one here. Your experience with TRT.
That was a low one for sure, yeah. And I guess with TRT, this is one of the things where I did get caught up in like the fitness industry, if you want to call it that way, I suppose. In just like doing what everyone else was doing and trying to, yeah, also just constantly trying to grow, trying to do things better, and then sort of like justifying it for myself, doing TRT. Because at the end of the day, what was happening, so TRT is testosterone replacement. Well, if people know something about fitness on your channel, they probably know.
Yep.
So yeah, using exogenous testosterone. So back at this was maybe a year after this men's health, maybe not even, maybe a couple months later. So I did a men's physique show, and the years before that, like I was cutting down every year, probably 5 times a year, just for like photo shoots, just for vacation trips that we did, content trips, because my whole thing was being shredded, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I started getting shredded since 19 years old, and I've done that for until I was 25, pretty much every year, like 4 to 5 times, and I got very low digit body fat. So here I did a photo shoot in the summer. Then I had a couple months. I did the men's physique show where I got insanely lean. The body fat caliper said, I think 3.6%. Obviously, that's not real, but it was very freaking lean. Then I had a couple weeks for the men's health cover, so I did that. And then after that, I started feeling so bad. And I already felt really bad during the men's health prep. That's also why I didn't look that good. I looked pretty watery. It was almost like I couldn't lose fat anymore. My body was kind of done with it.
Mm-hmm.
So here I was after, and I suppose I sort of reached the high of like I just had a lot of success with the book. I had a lot of fame in the Netherlands. I was on the men's health cover. I did the men's physique show. It was kind of like I've kind of done everything right now that I wanted to do.
Yeah.
I actually didn't expect myself to ever reach those goals. So I guess I got more from those years in my life than I ever expected. Because as a kid, I was never really good at school. I never really accomplished anything, was really motivated towards anything. So it was totally unexpected that I was going to accomplish all those massive things. So I guess I fell into kind of this dark hole. And so then you start asking yourself questions like, what's next? Because I was always running, and during the years, that's I guess why my YouTube channel did well, my career did well, because you always find the next thing and the next hype, and you see what works and you go for it. So after a while, after many weeks and months, I felt real shit, and I started talking to other guys, and I started hearing more about testosterone. And it's not like I never heard of it, because of course I have. I've been in the fitness industry for a while. But a lot of the guys around me are natural, and then the ones that are using, it's more about really like the big testosterone, the cycles, the other things they're using as well, the pills and like everything. And so it's obviously like doing that for like shows is different than doing TRT. So I guess I heard about TRT before, but not too much. I didn't really dig into it because I was never interested in steroids. Well, everyone who has been lifting has researched a bit, like, is this something for me? Obviously, you ask yourself regularly, in the beginning phases, of course, like should I do it? But I was very, I love the natural lifestyle. I love natural lifting. I look up to a lot of natty lifters, so I didn't even like the really big physiques. It's never been really attractive to me. And I knew I didn't want to compete after the men's physique show. It was kind of a one-time thing for me. I also know I don't have the best genetics, so I know it would just fuck up my health, and I would never become massively successful at it. I think it's a good, realistic way to look at it. So yeah, I started researching more, and I started hearing some entrepreneurs, because I started getting more successful, linking up with more entrepreneurs, even DJs and like people in that scene. And I started hearing them talk about TRT, and they were they were like in end 20s, they were in begin 30s. So this is different than what I ever heard about. And I never tested my blood work before, which is kind of crazy if I think about it now. Now I'm like, I should have optimized everything when I was younger. But when you're that young, I guess maybe back in the day it wasn't that big of a thing. I don't know. People didn't do their blood work that often. So I never did it before. So I started doing my blood work, and I was just shocked that like my testosterone levels were as low as an old man. And so this was months after like this men's health cover thing. And I did more tests, and I ended up doing 3 tests before we got into this whole protocol with a doctor.
Mm-hmm.
And my test just stayed that low. Now, looking back at it, I can reflect and see why all that happened. But anyways, when my test was that low, I decided it was a good idea to go on TRT, even though reflecting on it now, I was way too young. I should not have done it, and I could have optimized other things to boost my testosterone.
I get it, man. I can imagine the social pressure if you're around people who are doing that. They're getting bigger while staying lean. They seem like their energy's great. Their businesses are doing well. Like,
yeah,
it's pretty relatable. Like, if I even look back at things like high school, it's like I smoked weed a lot. Why did I smoke weed a lot? All my friends did. Did I know it was a good idea? Probably not. But did I do it all the time? Yes, because you just have that social pressure and that connectiveness. And then on your end, it's also good for your business to be shredded and big. So there's that additional pressure there. I can only imagine.
Yeah, so it's kind of knowing like, yeah, I felt kind of trapped. I felt kind of trapped in like, yes, I could gain a bunch of weight and then maybe get a higher testosterone, or I can stop working. But like, I don't want to stop working. I don't want to gain weight. I want to keep this lifestyle because I'm like doing really well now. So I got to keep going. And that's obviously kind of the thing the other entrepreneurs were doing as well. And then, as I said, I started just justifying it for myself. Whereas it also wasn't necessarily that I wanted to get way bigger. So the main justification was like, it's actually healthier for me to be on testosterone than it is to continue this way. Mm-hmm. Although that wasn't a proper way to look at it, but that was kind of how I was justifying it. So yeah, it was about like having more energy, feeling even better. And later that year, so I was on TRT for about 8 months. I hit a point of burnout. And I probably hit that point almost before TRT. And so TRT was sort of my, I guess, last resort, because it helps a lot mentally as well. If you have low testosterone levels. So instantly when I took it, instantly within a matter of weeks, I started feeling different. So I had more energy. I could sleep less, which is not necessarily a good thing, but it looked like a good thing because I could work more. I had more hours in the day. That's how I would kind of see it. I would have better workouts. It's not like it makes you lean, but it's obviously, if you have more energy, if you can build more muscle, it's easier to also be lean at the same time, I suppose. And for me, it's never been a problem to get lean necessarily. So it was easier for me to stay lean while having energy, right? That's kind of the main thing, I suppose. But then there are also obviously downsides about it. And so not being like sleeping 5 hours and still having energy might sound really good, but you could also take drugs every day and like, have energy all day, or do that a couple of days. That doesn't mean it's good. And so, right now with TRT, it could be good if you're older and you need it. But in this case, I was just very stressed out already. I saw this as kind of like this last resort where my body was actually signaling me like, you need to change something about your lifestyle, what you're doing now. And so 8 months later, I hit a point of burnout, like total. Like when people talk burnout, some people say it's not, like Andrew Tate has said, like burnout is not real. I guess maybe that's for him like a sort of a mental trick for himself, and I understand that part. But if people actually think it's not real, I can tell you that it actually is. It is very real, and it's not just a mental thing, it's also a physical thing. So the way for me mentally, I didn't even realize it because I still kept grinding, even when I felt so stressed. You start getting angry way more, you get super upset, like emotional. But at some point I just like walked out the door, I would turn the light on and I would see lights flickering, and my vision slowly started to disappear is what I felt.
Oh fuck.
It was fucking crazy. So the first thing I thought was simply, I'm having vision problems. I maybe need to go see someone about my vision, but that was not the real underlying issue. So I started telling my girlfriend. She knew more about this. Has to do with stress, but there has to be a lot of stress for this to happen. But at some point, I literally physically broke down, and my body was just like, I think I slept for possibly 5 days almost straight. I was only awake for a couple hours here and there. I was literally totally physically, mentally burned out. So that was crazy. So I had to call my business partners because I knew something was wrong, and I went to the doctor and everything, and it was pretty clear what was happening. I had to tell them like, hey, I can't work. I don't know when I'm gonna be back. I made like a YouTube video after some time,
Yeah.
which was really like an emotional video as well. And yeah, it was a crazy time. And this is when I had a realization after. So I didn't quit TRT right away, which I don't think would have been a smart decision, because when you are already that low, you don't want to add another low to it. So I quit about 4 weeks later, maybe 6 weeks later. I don't know the exact timeline. So I had vacation where I was just lying at home on the couch, and at some point I started kind of picking up stuff again. I had like a coach and a therapist and everything. I started going to a yoga retreat, like
Cool.
a solo retreat. Yeah, in Portugal. It was cool. I had no phone for a whole week, and like I started doing all these things to like take care of myself. And because for years I just made content every day. I was doing all this stuff.
You're
Always,
blogging. Like it seems like it's a lot of work.
yeah, it is a lot of work. And I also had 3 or 4 businesses at the same time, so with different business partners. It was crazy, and so I was just getting kind of back to myself, and then I realized, like, you doing TRT back in the day, I don't think it was necessary. I think I had to change something about my lifestyle, and so I actually did. I stopped TRT, and because I wanted to give it a try. I was like, I've only done this now for 8 months, so I can still possibly recover, maybe not, because once you do it, you actually do it for life. So I wasn't sure
Big
whether I was.
decision. Yeah.
It's a massive decision, yeah. So it's not that I just took the decision out of nowhere. It did take a couple months for me to make the decision, but when I had the burnout, I started obviously asking myself deeper questions about life, and I started kind of seeing through all the reasons why I did it. And
Do you feel like there's a question you could have asked yourself before you took TRT that would have landed you on saying no to it? Or do you think it was just there was too many things in motion that you had to try it?
No, I did not have to. Like, I should have given myself more time and patience, but I didn't have any patience. So if I had been a bit patient, I would have worked a bit less for some time, and I would have prioritized my sleep, and take more rest. And then I think by just doing those things, next to diet and stuff, I think by only doing those things with some higher calories and fats, I think my test would have already been normal, because that's what I did after, and it went normal pretty quickly, actually.
So it seems like you could have asked like, if you're someone who's in your situation, the question to ask is like, is my lifestyle actually optimal for my energy levels and my work? And then maybe solve that first. And if you still try, then like, it seems like you almost skipped a step there and you kind of went straight to TRT instead of that self-reflection. But luckily you were able to catch it within a year and then do the self-reflection. And I think everyone appreciates how authentic and honest you were about your journey kind of on your videos as well.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, what you're saying now is spot on. I guess I didn't have too much self-reflection back in the day, And I
You're in your
just
20s, man. Like you're
yeah,
you're pretty young doing all this stuff, you know?
yeah,
Like
madly successful. You just kind of want to keep it going, and if then also you have people around you that are doing certain things, you start
of
to
course.
trust them over other people that may have been more certified. You know what I mean. So yeah, it's a lot of factors there, but yeah, I would ask myself that question. What you're just saying, that's great. Yeah.
I got one more here. Getting a text when you were in Starbucks that said, "Is this student aesthetics?" And I think it was from Christian Guzman.
Christian Guzman. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So he's the owner of Alpha Lead, and it's a company I've always wanted to work with. Because when I started my YouTube channel, Christian Guzman was one of the inspirations, the first guys on YouTube in the fitness industry. So when he launched Alpha Lead, the clothing brand, I was like, I want to be part of this. So a lot of people wanted to be a part of Gymshark also, but I always felt something for Alpha Lead because I watched all his videos and I love the clothes. So I was like, this is awesome. Also, just a smaller team. And then I was trying to like get in touch with him. Like I sent him emails. I still know his email address from back in the day. And I asked Rob Lipsett, which was he's a fitness YouTuber from Ireland, one of my best friends as well. And he was one of the first guys I collab with. And he was with Alpha Lead. And so I asked him like, hey, can you do good work to Christian? But I still didn't hear anything back. So I'm like, shit, I don't know if this is gonna happen. And then I went on this trip with Nabil, my cameraman. We did an epic trip to like New Zealand, Australia, Dubai to basically shoot like epic content, go to gyms,
Yeah.
but also just shoot like cinema style fitness vlogs, I suppose. And then I just hoped that Christian would notice that I was making these crazy YouTube videos and would reach out someday. And then I had 100,000 subscribers on this trip. And then I got the text from him, like like a day later or so. Like, hey, is this the one and only student aesthetics? And then we went on a FaceTime call, I think the same day. And then I was sponsored. It was like that. And I still am. So it's like 7 or 8 years later.
Awesome, man. All right. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna throw up a photo on the screen here. And there's a bunch of people on here. Just tell me your first thoughts when you see this.
My first thoughts. Okay, so the left, oh, it's me and Joe. God damn, I look shredded over here. He looks shredded too, man. So, yeah. Yeah, so Joe is also one of the first, he's actually one of the funniest guys I know, but also a really like philosophical, smart dude that I've learned a lot from, to be honest. So me and Rob always say kind of like Joe is our big brother. So I think we called him once when we were about to do acid on a house party somewhere. Actually somewhere in LA, I think. We called him like, Joe, is this a wise idea? And yeah, he said it was not a wise idea. Okay, then we have Z's over here. He is it's one of my it was, I guess, one of the inspirations when I started lifting. In the very, very beginning. Then when I got more into it, less and less. Obviously, more of like I loved how he, as far as I remember, he was just a guy who didn't give too many fucks. And back in the day, that was right now kind of everyone seems to be not giving a fuck online, but he did it in a sort of a cool first way. I guess when you're young, I don't know how I would feel about watching his videos now, but when I was young, that was inspirational, like stepping out of your comfort zone, doing something different. And the partying lifestyle I obviously liked as well, which I guess I sort of did the same thing, but then I made informative videos about it rather than the inspirational stuff. Max and Rob, we were here in Ibiza. That was a crazy trip too. We had this villa. It was Max's first time in Europe, I think. He's like a real American, so we were in the middle of the night. We were partying and we were taking a cab back home. We didn't know where to go. He's like, we can just charge our phones were gonna go empty. He was like, we can just charge it at the IHOP. And I'm like, bro, we're in Ibiza, we're in Spain. They don't have IHOP here. He's like, of course we do. And so he goes on Google Maps. He says to the taxi driver, go to IHOP. There's no IHOP. That's so funny. That was a great trip. It's me and Stan, the man. He's really my best friend. Like we've known each other for a very long time, and he's also worked with me like from student aesthetics times, like sending T-shirts to being an online coach, and now he does his own lifestyle coaching as well. So that's really really cool. Then we have Chris Jones, which was my first kind of inspiration. He did a lot of these crazy dirty bulks, and I did one of those too. But yeah, he's still a really cool guy. I still watch his videos every now and then. He stayed very real over the years. And then we have Christian Guzman, which honestly is also one of my best friends. We don't see each other too much, but when we do, it's really really close. And Christian is a super nice guy, and over the years he really hasn't changed. Well, physically, I think we all have changed if you look at our photos, but just the way he treats people and what he's built with Alpha Lead is absolutely incredible. So I'm going to see him at the FIBO in about 2 weeks now. And then there's Igor here on the right in, where is this? Gold Coast, Australia. We did a collab there. Yeah. I haven't seen his videos recently, but he's one of the great physiques naturally on YouTube as well. For sure. Yeah. Well,
Awesome. All right. So I'm going to end today with kind of a fun question here. So, as someone who's trained with the Headhunters, vlogs at several festivals, you may agree with me that music can impact your emotions and bring you back to a time and a feeling. So, I'm going to play a track and tell me the first thing that comes to mind. And if you can remember the first time you heard it. All right. Tell me if you can hear it now.
no.
All right, don't worry about it. It was the Struggle by Nick K and Jane, your intro to student aesthetics.
Yeah, that was the theme song. I use it once in a while when I accomplish something, because it always gives back the vibes. I think even if you go to their YouTube channel, to that video of Struggle, you will find all comments on student aesthetics.
Yeah, that's probably where like 80% of the people found it.
Yeah, I made that song famous. I've actually been in touch with the songwriter. He was wanting to do a new song. We never got to it, but it was kind of funny.
Dude,
yeah,
awesome. Merijn, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. Where can everyone find you?
Yeah, they can just find me under my name, MERIJN, on every platform basically. YouTube, Instagram, TikTok. I'm not too active, so just go to those two, and you'll find me. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks for your time.
I appreciate it too, man. And I love this podcast. I love the way you're doing it.
Dude, I appreciate it.